Yeah, so talk to me about the podcast then. What's happening with that?
So it's a little idea we've had for a while. Basically getting dads in to talk about life-changing, inspiring stories through DadSpace. I think there's a lot of dads out there that have got stories to tell. So I think we want to put a platform on there to really sort of talk about that. But not just that, we want to sort of give a bit of a backstory about DadSpace as well, so people understand what it is, why I started it, etc. So we can get all that out there in the early stages, and then sort of get the guests in, like dads with stories, to sort of really tell them, to sort of spread the word. And obviously it's a great advertising tool for us in terms of knowing about our events and stuff like that, and just spreading the word and boosting the brand as such, really, I suppose. I
think that's a good place to start for today's video, in which case, what is DadSpace?
What is DadSpace? So DadSpace ultimately is a safe space for all dads to talk, listen and share. So it's very, very simple. We have a talking piece circle, and we have a stone that goes around, and when you're holding that stone, that's your opportunity to speak. But you can say as much or as little as you want. There's no pressure. We have our rules of engagement at the beginning, just to make sure everyone's clear on not interrupting anyone and being mindful of time. But other than that, if you got that stone, you can share as much or as little as you want, like with whatever's going on in your life. And that ultimately is what DadSpace is. It's that talking piece circle. And then all the other stuff we do around that is sort of like just adds on to that, really. So we do walks as well. So we do walk and talks. We do gym sessions. We do bushcrafting. I've got an archery one coming up actually soon as well. So we try to sort of add in what I call sort of like special events and stuff, and sort of pepper them throughout the year, just to give people the opportunity to come to something they might be interested in, because I realise that one size doesn't fit all. Yes. Not every dad would be comfortable coming to, say, what we call a standard DadSpace meeting. Maybe you'd be interested in one of the gym sessions or the bushcrafting. But I like to think that there'd be something that everyone will like when we sort of do all of our different types of events, Yeah,
and I like that sort of approach of putting various different elements into it, because similar to the example that I spoke about, the lawnmower example, of how they got men to speak about their mental health around the lawnmower, using exercise or some form of sort of physical stimulation as a vehicle for conversation is a wonderful idea, because people aren't thinking about the emotion in the same way. It's far more constructive.
No, absolutely, yeah. And the thing is as well, like with the gym sessions, like what I was saying about the talking piece circle, we'll do that in the gym we do is a like mixed martial arts gym.
Nice.
So we do it in the ring. So we sit down in the circle in the ring and have the talking piece circle there. So whatever type of meeting we're doing, this talking piece circle will always be there, because that is what DadSpace ultimately is. And the thing is as well, the type of venues that we pick as well, they're like, I tend to sort of pick like pubs with function rooms, rugby clubs, places like that. It's not about alcohol, because a lot of our sessions are on a Saturday morning, so it's over a coffee or tea. Yeah. But it's really trying to tap into what guys can feel comfortable coming to, a venue that they feel like, oh yeah, this is where I feel safe.
It's a place of comfort.
Yeah, and basically that. Yeah, so that tends to work. We seem to get good engagement off the type of venues that we pick, and a lot of the time as well, they're quite rural, the areas that we do the meetings in. So there's always great walks we can do sort of in the countryside and that, which is getting the guys outside, getting active. And some guys prefer that. Yeah. Some guys prefer maybe not sharing so much in the circle. They might find that a bit too much, because it's quite daunting when you're coming into a group when you don't know anyone. But when they go for the walk, you're going to basically be walking with one other person looking forward. And some people prefer that way of opening up while you're walking and just facing what's in front of you. And so, yeah, it gives you the option of both by doing that, I think, really. And everyone's got that opportunity to share. But equally, some guys come and they may not say anything for months, but they just being present and listening is enough for them. And then in time, they share, when it's right for them.
Yeah, and it's sharing that space as well. As you say, some people might not actually immediately put themselves forward, but you're in a position where, mental health, one of the prevalent themes of mental health is feeling as though you're not a part of something. So to be in a place where you don't have to literally put yourself in the proverbial firing lines or the mental firing lines, you can just share a space with someone, and I think that's critical. I think that is a when that element is not in play for people, that's where problems come into play. So to have somewhere where you can choose to be interactive yourself or to just be a part of something, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think it's a really great way of doing it.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's like, some guys, like I said, don't open it, but we create it's what we call a brotherhood. DadSpace is
I like
brotherly
that.
support
That's really
between fathers, and something that I'm quite aware of as well is not every dad, every bloke has got a massive group of friends. Not everyone's got that. Not everyone's fortunate enough to have that, whether it be through change of location from where you've moved. You might have moved complete towns. You could be living up north and you've come down south and you might not have a big friendship group, or you may work from home. DadSpace gives you friendship as well, and it provides that space where you can connect with other blokes. And then we have a lot of dads who meet up outside of DadSpace socially. Do you know what I mean? Which for me, that's massive. We connected like 2 or 3 blokes from coming to a DadSpace session. Now they're mates. But that's brilliant, isn't it?
That's what it's for.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much. It's so many things. It's you've got guys coming who really are struggling and they do need help. And obviously we signpost to professional help if people do need it.
That's good.
But equally, if we are also there for guys who haven't got big friendship groups and they just want to meet other dads and have that connection. It really is everything, everything from an expecting dad right through to granddads, and also as well, I must say, you don't have to be a dad to come to DadSpace. We welcome all men who need a space to come and talk.
And I think that's that element there of that sort of total inclusivity is, I think that's really a nice thing, because you can pick from that as well. So to take it sort of one step backward from an expectant father, you can have someone who understands that at some point in time there'll be a father, and this is there's some challenges here that I can say, how did you deal with that, and that element of sort of community is wonderful. How does it make you feel when you see that you've sort of the space that you've created has promulgated sort of friendships outside of that?
It makes me tremendously proud, to see what we've done, where it started, right at the beginning, like 3.5 years ago in Maidstone, to see it now and seeing. I mean, I had an example actually. We had a guy who been coming to DadSpace for quite a while, and he'd been struggling with seeing his kids and stuff like that and bits and pieces, and that comes up quite a lot. We have a lot of single dads coming to DadSpace, and there was another dad who come into the group first time, very same situation, and from that friendship sort of grew between the two of them, because they were able to relate to each other, their story, although one was further down the line, they could relate to each other, and it was just a really special moment, and they connected and become really good friends. So that was great, yeah.
So let's touch on that. In which case, where did DadSpace start? November 2021. What was going on there?
November 2020. What, as in the location, or
So how did it come to? Let's sort of go right to the root here. How did you decide that this was something you wanted to bring into play?
Yeah, so becoming a dad for the second time, really. I had concerns. I had questions going around in my mind that I didn't want to bring up with my wife, because I didn't want to worry her. Money concerns. Could we financially support another child? Because it's tough. It's tough having bringing up kids and financially supporting them. And so yeah, I had concerns about that. Whether I'd be a good dad. Obviously I've had one child. Now I'm having 2. I've got to now spread my love between 2 children, and that's quite an interesting thing to sort of think. Well, I don't think how can I love someone the same as my daughter that I've currently got, but you do, because it just naturally happens. But it's getting your head around that. Whether I'd be a good partner to my wife. So I had all these things going around in my head, like I say, that I didn't discuss with her or with any of my mates, really, because I would definitely find when you're going out with your mates, if you're going out for a beer, the mood tends to be up there.
Yeah.
It's, you're almost in that sort of what I call make-believe world for that time. Do you know what I mean? It's like a happy place. And, if you've got stuff in the back of your mind, you don't tend to bring it to the forefront because you don't want to take yourself there, because at that moment you're feeling good.
Yes.
And equally, you're thinking about everyone else and not going to that space. So you don't tend to touch on those things as much. So I had all these things going around in my mind. It's just like, well, where can dads go to talk about, how they're finding things, whether it be, you're looking for tips on how to look after a child and stuff like that, and all the sort of tools that go with that. But equally, your mental health about becoming a dad. I had all these things going on in my head, so I wanted to create a space initially for dads to be and new dads, because that was the situation I was in.
I see.
So that was the original format of it. But then speaking to a lot of my mates who've got older kids, who are like teenagers and stuff, they're like, well, it doesn't get any easier. You're still a dad. It's just the issues and the things in life are just different like that. So I was like, no, you're right. It needs to be inclusive for all dads. And I'm so glad that I made that decision to make it for all dads, because one thing that brings the guys at DadSpace together is we're all in different parts of the journey of fatherhood. Some are at the beginning, some are further down, then some are granddads. But there's one thing that we're all got in common, and that's we're all dads. And I think that's, always remembering that, like, we're all here to help each other. So yeah, that's where the inspiration sort of came from, sort of those moments of becoming a dad for the second time, and really sort of thinking, well, where can I go and talk about this? And ultimately, there wasn't anywhere. Yeah. That was it. And I then started to think about how it could work, like the format of it and stuff like that. I was chatting to my wife a lot in depth about, well, look, I think there's something that needs to be done here. And having, COVID obviously was a very difficult time for everyone, as we know. But if there are positive things that can come out of it, it gave me time to think about how I could structure DadSpace as such, like that. And I was chatting to a lot of my mates and my friend. I had a few calls with my friend Amit, who really sort of helped me sort of with how we could structure the circle and stuff like that, and bits and pieces. And it was really like, from speaking to my wife and him and my other friends, it was like that light bulb moment. I know what I'm going to do now. I know that I'm going to do something for dads. I knew, and it was that thought. And then it was really sort of like coming up with a name and stuff like that. And then I launched the first DadSpace meeting in November 21. Yeah, and that was and obviously I had two concerns in my mind there. Would any dads turn up?
Yeah.
And would anyone talk? And I had 15 guys turn up to that first meeting we did, which was amazing. And I had a lot of content. I had a hell of a lot of content that I had there, because I didn't know if I'd need it or not. But actually, I probably needed half of it, because it became very apparent, I think, after about 2 or 3 guys of speaking, that it was needed a hell of a lot more than what I even realised. And we had guys opening up about a traumatic birthing experience that they still haven't spoken to their partners about, because they didn't feel that, because they didn't give birth, they felt guilty that to share that it affected them as well. But to sort of hold those feelings in for years, and then to see it all being released, and you see people's shoulders drop and say it's all right to talk about these things, it's all right to say it was hard. And then it's like dominoes, because then you see one guy open up, and then it's like the next guy goes to the next one, and they're like, oh, actually, this is all right to talk then. This is all right. This is safe. And you see it go round, and I realised then, I was like, wow, this is powerful. This needs to be everywhere.
Yeah, it does, and it's that unfortunate stigma that is attached to the opening up of men's emotions. Is you are considered that sort of bastion of the family unit. It's, if anyone can bear the weight of the world on their shoulders, it's dad. And of course, from my understanding from my father, is you do as best as you can to do that, but your shoulders can only take so much. And I think it's the subversion of that narrative is absolutely critical. And I like something you touched on there of sort of the different elements or the different sort of granddads, expectant fathers, the different variations of fatherhood. That sort of connection within fatherhood, I think, is a really nice sort of helping hand toward the question of loneliness that can come into play when your mind is not the place it should be, because you feel instantly a part of something, and I would wage that the sort of intensity of the emotion of being a dad makes that one step further. What was the sort of you speak of a sort of construction of what you brought to the first meeting? What actually happens in the meeting? What was the sort of outline?
What, as in when, like, if I'm introducing it, sort of thing, like,
yeah. So talk to me. So run me through sort of people coming through the door. Everyone sat down. Where are we going from here?
So start off with, very relaxed. Everyone sort of, have a bit of a mingle and a chat for 5-10 minutes till everyone sort of arrives. Grab a coffee, grab a tea, and then I'll start off with up and coming events that are coming up, and also anyone that's new that's right. Say I'm doing like a session in a brand new location, I would always start with the backstory of DadSpace. That was and what DadSpace ultimately is, and giving everyone that space to understand a bit more about why I'm doing it, why this space is here, the locations we've got. Yeah, as much information about DadSpace as I possibly can, so people fully understand what it is. I think really that's always like an intro into what it is. And then as sessions go on, if we have sessions where guys have been, there's all guys that are regulars, then obviously we wouldn't need to do that. We go straight into the talking piece, which obviously gives more people time to talk for longer if they need it. So which is great. So
at this point, I assume we're into passing the stone.
So passing the stone would always be at the beginning. And see that could last. So a DadSpace session would last about 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the early days, so like in probably the first year, I would say if you're doing like a full-on what I call a DadSpace sit-down meeting. So we have two types of standard meetings. Yeah. One sit down, which we'll do like in a function room of a pub or a pub that's closed, which would last 2 hours. And then we do our walk and talks. So they're the two sort of standard DadSpace sessions that we run. If you're doing a purely sit down one, you'd have the talking piece circle at the beginning, which in the old days would last about an hour, depending on the size of the group. I would then have content questions that I would fire at the dads, the second half of the meeting, around being a dad, being a parent, etc., etc. Just like interesting conversations, really, about fatherhood. And we also get guest speakers coming in from time to time.
I did see that. Yeah.
So we've had ADHD coaches come in. We've had relationship coaches come in. Mental health specialists come in. So I try to sort of, because we don't give advice at DadSpace, we're there to facilitate a space. You know, we're very much like, you may get the answers that you're looking for by experience, lived experiences, you know. But ultimately, we would never tell anyone you should do this, etc., because we're not professionals. So I think it's good for us to bring in the professional element as well, because people need to know, you know, a bit more information about especially particular subjects like ADHD and stuff like that. I think it's really good. So we try to pepper those in throughout the year as well, sort of the guest speaker element. So I've got quite a backlog of people actually that I want to try and get in through the rest of this year. So it's just finding the right times, and because the times of year that you do things on can affect things as well. When it's nicer, the weather, you tend to want to do more walk and talks, get outside. So when the weather's not so good, that's the good time to get the guest speakers in as such like that. But the thing that, I'm going back to what I was saying about the talking piece circle, and ultimately that's what DadSpace is we found, especially recently over the last year, is that the guys are talking a lot more now. So I'm not needing the content of questions, which just goes to show, like how men and dads in our case are finding this a lot more comfortable now. You know, like I say, we're at the beginning, you'd have, do you know what I mean? They opened up, they shared, but now a DadSpace session could be indoors for 2 hours just with the talking piece, which is brilliant.
Yes,
because that ultimately is what it is, and the questions were there purely as backup if we need them, you know. And if you're going for a walk, you go for a walk. So yeah, that's probably like the basic format of DadSpace there, really, I'd say.
And I love that sort of the progressing level of comfort that you've got there, because that is the case. It's that first hurdle a lot of the time for men when they reach that point and they jump over that hurdle and realise, oh, actually, it is okay for me to talk about these things. And on a personal basis, I think one of the most prevalent themes of this is the fear of seeming as though you're weak. I think that's a very common thing for people, and it's a great shame because it's sort of accidentally hypocritical, because you think you're bearing all of this weight and you're doing all of these things and you're making sure that your wife's okay, you're making sure that your kid's okay, maybe you've got another kid coming, you're making sure that's okay, you've got the finances to deal with, and you think you're bearing so much weight and showing such an obvious level of strength, and yet your fear is weakness.
Yeah.
And it's getting over that is a big thing, and I think your sort of the approach of having it in spaces that are familiar, but as you touched on earlier, spaces where you wouldn't normally have those conversations, I think that's a really nice bridge.
Yeah.
Because I know exactly what you mean. I've had times where I've got a good night ahead of me, or I'm going out with some friends or something like that, and you're not in the best of mental frames, but you don't want to sort of project that on to what is a nice time. You would rather look and go, well, I'll have a good time and I'll feel better for it. And you do, but only to an extent. You know, it sort of, it very much papers over the cracks.
But you're in that, the thing is as well, you're in that bubble, aren't you?
Yeah.
When you're out with your friends and that, it's
you
that
don't
bubble.
feel the same way.
No, you don't. Because it's not real life.
Yeah.
Is it ultimately? You've taken yourself out of real life for an evening into a bubble with your mates, which is brilliant. Yes. I think it's very, very important that if you can do that, you know, it's definitely a positive for your mental health. But in terms of dealing with things that are going on in your head, it's not, you know, my opinion, it's not the place to be doing that, or you'd feel comfortable to do that. So it tends to be, that's why when people come to DadSpace, you know, you're coming with that intention of potentially opening up.
Yeah, you know what you're coming for.
You know what you're coming for. Exactly.
As you say, if you sort of, your friends are all anticipating a night out, and all of a sudden they're in the midst of a therapy session, it's not the same way as if you're looking and going, I'm going to go and have a coffee and I'm going to talk about some stuff. And that this is something that I hold quite close to my heart, actually. This sort of sharing a space with people over something like a coffee. I think that's a really important thing to do. And I do think you can I think you can sprinkle these elements into every sort of everyday scenarios. If you are going out with your friends, I think you can you have to be careful how you do it, as to not sort of push yourself right into the midst of these deep emotions. But I think you can sort of make it known that actually you're needing to share a space.
Yes.
I think that's doable.
Yeah, I think it's doable, definitely, like that. And I think if you are out with your friends as well, like, have those conversations at the beginning of the night as well. Yeah. You know, just let people know, I've had a bit of a tough time actually at the moment, like that. And you might find just by sharing that a little bit, do you know what? That's helped a little bit. Yeah. 10%, I feel a bit, 10%, you know, that I've shared that at the beginning of the evening, and then go on and have a nice night.
There's some weight lost there.
Yeah, just a little bit, you know.
And you feel I feel as though there's some form of immediate connection that is cultivated there. When it's with your friends, of course, your friends want the best for you. And as a result of that, they're going to be receptive to the idea that, you know, let's huddle around a bit. You know, let's make sure that this is a nice night. And then you sort of get it's almost self-fulfilling, that you've got sort of people who are aware of the fact that you're in a space where you need some more support, and as a result of that, the night is going to be better. I do think, for lack of better phrase, sort of positive escapism is a very good tool. I notice, particularly for stress, and of course for dads, stress is a prevalent theme. I would wage it's one of the front runners, you know. And I think having a space where you can decompress on both fronts. I think holding one that is specifically for fun and one that is closer towards the sort of mental aspects of things is important. I'd be interested to see how you sort of integrate physical activity into this, because of course physical activity is a wonderful therapy. So where does that come into play? With
the gym sessions and that, you mean? Yeah, so brilliant gym not far from here, just up the Sutton Road in Maidstone, called Fitter, Stronger, Faster. It's a gym that I've been attending for about 6 years now. They do boxing, kickboxing, MMA, lots of like hit sessions and stuff like that. It's a brilliant gym. And I spoke to Dom, who owns the gym, about potentially doing some gym sessions for the guys, because as we know, you know, physical activity has a positive impact on your physical health and your mental health. And that's why I really wanted to tap into that. That's why I wanted to do some of those sessions, because I think I know from my personal experience when I've been low and I'm feeling, maybe not been sharing as much with other people, talking about how I was feeling, going to the gym and having a big workout, how much that makes you feel better just by having that. And you come away and you think, I don't understand why that made me feel so much better, but you've released it, whatever that tension is, and just got it out there. Even if you just feel better for that the rest of that evening, a little bit more, then that's good. Then that's a box ticked, isn't it? Yeah. Like that. So yeah, that was really just tapping into. I think it's important. Like even like the walks. Do you know what I mean? That again, it's getting outside, going for a walk. How important that is. And then the gym sessions were sort of taking it to the next level, really. And I sort of wanted to sort of tap into different things we do there. So we've done a few sort of hit sessions with the guys, but also we get the guys on some pads and doing a bit of boxing and stuff like that. You know, it's funny. Do you know what I mean? It's a good laugh. Do you know what I mean? Guys have never put a pair of boxing gloves on, seeing how they feel. You know, well, surprisingly heavy. Yeah, they are. And it's just getting all the guys, just being part of a team as well, and getting involved and just doing something together, and then throwing in the talking piece circle as well. Yeah. It's just, I think it's a great addition to what we do.
Agree.
I think, you know.
I totally agree. I'd like to borrow into actually your, what's your history with martial arts? Is that something you're interested in?
So I do a bit of boxing.
Yeah.
I did a fight, about 6 years ago actually now in April, which was probably I'd probably say, actually I won't touch on it too much now, but putting myself through that process of doing a white collar fight was probably the best thing I've ever done in my life for me. Yeah. Because I had always in life gone for the easy option on things, academically, jobs and stuff like that, and never really pushed myself. And when this opportunity came, I'd always been a boxing fan as a kid. Loved, like Eubank, Ben, the Rocky films.
I saw a Mike Tyson quote on WhatsApp.
Yeah. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah. The plan is don't get punched in the face.
Yeah. And so, yeah, do you know what I mean? I grew up, Frank Bruno, Tyson. I remember getting up in the early hours to listen to Tyson v Bruno. Me and Dad listened to it on the radio, little portable radio and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So always loved boxing. And then when this opportunity come up for this white collar thing, I thought, I'm going to do it. And my wife's like, really? What do you want to do? I said, I wanted to challenge myself and didn't realise it as much as what I needed it. And it was a lot more for my mental health than what it was physically. Yeah. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done, physically and mentally. You know, when you're taking yourself through those training sessions, and I remember this particular time, and I was sparring, and I was just getting battered, and I remember just like feeling really claustrophobic, and I just took myself out of there, went to the toilet, and I was sick from the training because it was hard, and I think the emotion of it all, and I got up and I was like, I just wanted to get out of there, and I looked at the door, and I was like, right, I'm going to go now. I can't do this. This is too hard for me. And then something in my head went, no, you're not going to give up this time. Do you know, you're not going to go for the easy option. So I looked at that door, and then I looked at the door back into the sparring, and that was the decision. That was the moment where things changed for me. And then I went back in there and I finished it, and I finished the whole training session, and got to have the fight at the end. I didn't win the fight in the ring, but I won the fight myself.
Yeah, I like
that was the thing. And I walked off of after completing the fight. I lasted the 3 rounds. I completed the 3 rounds, which I'm really, really proud of. And as I come off, I was crying. And all my friends and my family, they go, "What are you crying for? What are you crying for? You've done really well." I said, "I'm not crying because I'm upset. I'm crying because I'm pleased. I'm pleased that I've achieved something. It actually started something and finished it and gave it my absolute all." Do you know what I mean? It's probably the first time I've ever done that. And the reason I sort of wanted to touch on that was I would probably say that if I hadn't gone through that whole process, I don't know if I would have had the courage to start something like DadSpace.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think, when you're starting something like this completely new and you're going like, this is a big deal. Do you know what I mean? I'm putting myself out there. I'm putting myself on social media. I'm doing something no one else has done. But gone in there and got punched in the face, and it's not going to be as hard as that.
Yeah, that's not particularly fun.
Do you know what I mean? So I sort of thought, I can do that. I can do this. Do you know what I mean? And of course, it's as hard as DadSpace. Obviously, is a hell of a lot of hard work, and it's as hard as doing the boxing. Of course, it is. But that gave me the motivation to say, you can do this, because I'd done it once. I can go there again.
Yeah.
And that was really the moment, really, that inspired me to do it. Yeah.
And I think there's a wonderful message in there. I think the sort of, I'm not sure how much sort of light is cast upon the fact that when you do something that you really didn't think you can do, there's sort of touching closer toward this sort of element of anxiety. A lot of that is embedded in feeling as though you can't do something. You're not up to it somehow. You know, other people might be able to do that, but you can't do it. When you do something like that, when you choose to go into back through the door and back into the ring, you tell yourself something that's so undeniable. You know, and there's a quote that I'm really fond of on this about outworking your self-doubt, of giving yourself an undeniable stack of evidence that you are who you say you are. And I think that's great. Of when you do something that's that difficult, there's something. It's the panacea to worry, because you can't. If you feel as though you're somehow undeserving of something, if you can say to yourself, well, no, I went through a 6-month training camp there, and I went into that ring despite all the fear, despite all the discomfort, and I did that. No one can take that away from you.
No.
And I think that's a really important thing for sort of physical activity, is even in the micro form of, or relatively micro form of a gym workout, for that day, you cannot possibly say to yourself that you haven't, you know, exerted yourself in some fashion, because you have.
Yeah.
And I think it's that sense of completion is absolutely critical. And I do think, I mean, I have my own experiences in martial arts, and I do testify to that there is a tremendous amount of value in them. I think there's a sort of mental prestige that you're afforded as a result of feeling competent that's very important. And I think where I'd like to go actually is how you sort of integrate martial arts in that way that's progressive rather than potentially oppressive, because they can be very difficult. You know, you will understand perfectly well that they can be tremendously. I like the way you put it, sort of claustrophobic. That feeling of being, and you just, it's not fun.
No.
So how do you sort of integrate it in a way that is fun and is progressive? Because there absolutely is the room for that. It's totally there.
Yeah. So what do you mean, like, as in how
do you do the pad work? What's going on there? How do you sort of bring that into play?
In our DadSpace sessions, the pad work. So it's very fun. So obviously Dom, who runs the gym, he sort of like runs it all, and we get each other in pairs, and we all line up and everything like that, and he'll get them to do some basic 1-2, and it's all stuff that everyone can sort of do really, and stuff like that. And it's just, and then they swap everyone round, so everyone gets to go with everyone in. If people are more experienced, people have done it before, they'll go with the people that have not. So you help each other. Yeah. Do you know what I mean, like that? So you'll let them sort of come at you a bit more, and you won't hit them in the same way and stuff like that. So it's a real guidance thing really and stuff. That's how it sort of works. Yeah. And
that's the nice way to do it. I think when you go to a good gym, that's what you get. You get people that are aware of the fact that you need my help, and I'm happy to give you that help.
Yeah.
And I think martial arts is a very nice way of sort of touching on those. That connection.
It is. I mean, I haven't sort of carried on the boxing to anywhere near the level that I was training at when I did the fight. I've got no desire to want to go back in the ring again.
Yeah,
it was for me that was what I it was like the pinnacle. That was it. I got in there, did it. There are moments where you sort of go, I could get back in there and stuff like that. But you got 70%'s not enough. Yeah. You got to be 100%. Saying like, if I'm gonna go back in there, I can't give it 70%. You got to give that 100%, because that other person will be giving it 100%. And if you don't give what he's got, you're in trouble. Yeah. You know. So I still train. I probably go. I mean, I go to various other classes they do. They're like hit sessions and bits and pieces and stuff like that. I went to boxing last night actually, and it was a bit of sparring. And this is where it's good. This is why it's a brilliant gym. Is like you say, everyone helps themselves. You've got all different levels of people there. And my cardio's always been rubbish. Do you know what I mean? I was sparring with this guy Dylan at the end there, and he was helping me. He's going, "Come on, you can go again like that." And we're just try and take a breath, and just and it was just like just little things like that, just helping you just get through that last minute, even though he's sparring you. Yeah. It's just a real lovely place to be. And I'd be like I say, I signed up to that 10-week program, and I've been going there ever since. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a community gym, and it's lovely to be able to have DadSpace doing sessions there as well, and being part and bringing that community of DadSpace to the gym community.
Yeah, yeah, and I say I think martial arts in terms of sort of personal satisfaction or feeling of just feeling good about yourself. I think martial arts are pretty unrivaled on that when it comes to physical exertion. You know, gym, of course, the gym is very positive and it makes you feel good about yourself. But there's something, because you've got so many elements of adversity at play when it comes to martial arts, when you're in that situation, once that's done, you know, it's not particularly fun getting punched in the face, but afterwards you do feel, you know, slightly disoriented, but otherwise satisfied.
Satisfied, yeah. I think that's a good way of looking at it, yeah.
There's a question I've got here that I think I'm interested to see where your thoughts go on this. If you had 5 minutes with any dad, any new coming dad, to speak to them, what would you say?
What, so if I've got a dad that's turned up to DadSpace?
You've got a dad in front of you who says, just about to be a dad.
Oh, okay.
What do I do?
Right, okay.
You've got 5 minutes.
Yeah. First thing I'd say is come to DadSpace. And that's probably the first thing I'd say. I'd say it's the most wonderful thing in the world being a dad, but it can also be one of the hardest things as well, most challenging things. And don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you've got questions, ask the questions. Don't bottle them up. And savor the moments, I'd say, really, because they're not young forever. And I think that's something that's, you know, I've been very aware of lately. My kids are growing up so quick now. My eldest is 11, and my Maya, she's 7. She's going to be 8 soon. And it's just, just try and enjoy, and it's as hard as it is, just try and enjoy them for when they're there, when they're little, and nurture them as they grow and stuff like that. Because I think, yeah, it's a brilliant, and it's a privilege, right? Being a dad, not every man gets to have that opportunity. Yeah. So I you know, if you're fortunate enough to become a dad, just take it on and embrace it, and just embrace it, and don't worry if you're struggling, or just talk to people and just say, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, and it might be practical stuff or it might be emotional stuff, but just share. And come to DadSpace, obviously, because all those questions and things that I said there, that is what we talk about. Yeah. And it's having those moments where you'll come there as an expecting dad, and you'll be thinking about this, you'll be thinking of money, all the things that I was saying earlier. Will I be a good dad? Oh, everyone tells me that I'm not going to be sleeping. Everyone tells me that I'm not going to ever go out again with my mates. That was one that used to get to me before I'd done DadSpace. My mates say, well, you know, you won't go out you don't better go out anymore or anything like that. And the thing is, though, no one's telling you that that's not the case, so you believe that. Yeah. So I was a nightmare. Like with our first child, I was, every opportunity I had to go out and have a drink with my mates, whatever, I was taking, because I thought, this is it. I'm not going to do it ever again. And it's actually rubbish, because you still do, but it's just different. Yeah. You know, you still have those opportunities to be with your mates and having a drink and enjoying that, but you just adapt life with family life. You know, you don't do it in the same way. It's just different. Yeah, and it is that. I like what you said there of sort of, you don't have that opposing force saying that's not true. You know, and that's quite common for a lot of these problems. Yeah. Is you'll have one person who might have had that experience or have had a similar experience to that, or have even heard it. You know, it's by proxy, and that runs, and someone will say, "Oh my God, this is the last time I'm ever going to do anything. I'm now condemned to the inward existence of my household." Yeah, there's, I suppose that's exactly where a space like DadSpace becomes so useful. Is that subversion?
you have that positive influence that tells you factually the way things are, not sort of almost satirically the way things are. It's not that way.
No. And the thing is as well, like, you know, it sounded like a funny thing. They're saying, like, your mate's telling you you're not going to go out for a drink again. But actually, that caused a bit of an issue with my wife and I when we was having our first, before Sienna was around, because I was trying to be out every opportunity. Oh, God, I was like, we've got now like 2 months to go. I'll be trying to get myself out again because I thought it was all going to finish. Yeah. And do you know what I mean? All I needed was somewhere to go and talk about it and say, no, look, it's not going to be like that. You know, you're still going to do things. It's just different. Because but those conversations weren't happening then with any dads. So they were just like, you just accepted that's the way it was, and then you just be like, right, okay, so now I'm just going to be indoors all the time, and this is it, you know.
Into this cot.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, of course it is hard. It is hard at the beginning of that, but it's brilliant. And as you adapt and go through navigating as parents, you then, well, actually, do you want to go out tonight with your friends like that? And then you go out with your friends, and then collectively you'll get babysitters in as they get a bit older, and then you two go out as a couple.
Yeah.
You know, embrace that time. You know, it's important you do. You know that we always say that. Me and Nina and I, it's important that we do stuff as a couple, so we remember who Nina and Denver are. Yeah. And that she spends time with her friends, and I spend time with my friends as well, because it's just good for your minds and being Denver, and but as much as I love being a dad, you need to remember who you are as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical part of this. I think there's how much bearing do you think sort of catastrophizing has on this, where people think the worst is at play. You know, sort of just that real sense of anxiety, as you say, think, oh, I'm never going to be able to go out again. How much of that do you think has a bearing on sort of Ben's mental health when it comes to parenting?
I think I think it does have a big bearing on it. Yeah, just not if you're not discussing it, talking about how you're feeling about it, and then having people to say that's not the case, or it's all right, actually I felt exactly like that, but whatever you think in your head, it was nowhere near as bad as that. You know, I think that's the thing. Yeah.